Chinese quality control strikes again. I didn't see this coming. I should have seen it coming. Actually, I should have seen it happen, but I didn't. And you guys did and brought it to my attention in the comments. So this happened at the 32-second mark of yesterday's video. And I'll give you the quick background on how this came to be before I get into the actual part. So I shot yesterday's video. And one of the things I wanted to do is show you guys how the engine sounded, how it ran. So I walked around with the camera and I shot the exhaust and I shot under the hood, and then I shot the part where I was talking. As soon as I was finished, I ran back to the house. I handed it to Kathy for her to edit and put up. And then a little while later, she showed me what she had. And I says, where's the part where I was revving the engine up? So she says, well, you didn't give it to me. I had accidentally deleted it. So with that, I jumped on a bike. I ran back up here to the shop as quickly as I could, fired the car up, shot the opening that you saw in the video yesterday, and then ran back and handed it to her so she could include it in the video and post it. Now, what I didn't see with my eyes, but got picked up with the camera, is that when I revved the engine, this little piece right here, this float bowl vent extension, got sucked into the carburetor. Now, we got lucky with this because it happened just as I was letting go of the throttle. So when this got sucked in, it just laid on top of the throttle blades. I was able to fish it out without any problem. Nice and easy. It could have very, very easily have gone down into the engine. So now I'm not going to get all dramatic and stuff and say like, this could have destroyed my engine. No, okay, it's a piece of brass. The worst that would have happened was it would have gotten into a combustion chamber, got knocked around, maybe killed a spark plug, and it probably would have just been sent out the exhaust. And I know this from experience of doing this for half a century. You know, little things like this, they generally won't destroy an engine. So I don't want to get all dramatic and say, this could have killed me, right? No, it just would have been maybe an inconvenience. But that's not the point. The point is, this was installed at the factory in the Wingdong Providence by the well-trained 9-year-old girl who does these things, and it wasn't pushed far enough into the body of the carburetor for it to actually remain stable. So what this extension does, I'll show you where it goes and what it does. This extension fits into this hole right here, like so. Okay, and the purpose of this is so that when the choke is closed and the engine is cold, the choke's only open about this much. If you give it gas at this point, it's going to try to pull fuel up through this vent, right? So that's the purpose of this, is just to make sure that when the choke is closed and you give it gas, it's not pulling fuel out of the bowl. Really, the only purpose is this thing serves. But the point is, it's part of the design of these carburetors. It's been part of the design of those BBD carburetors since the very beginning. And the Strombergs before that, because the BBD is actually a copy of the old Stromberg. But that's besides the point. That's what this piece does. And as you saw in that video, when I gave it gas, it got sucked out of the body of the carburetor and down into the carb. So that's a problem. You know, here's the thing with this. Now these carburetors, and there are tons of different knockoffs. Now the Chinese are really knocking off every carburetor there is. Right? The AFBs and the Hollies and Quadrajets and these, you know, BBDs and the BBSs and the Holly versions of them. They're knocking off all of these carburetors. And what I have found in the course of using these carburetors on occasion is that they function really well. Like there's no complaints. And one of the things I had forgotten about was about 2 years ago, we did just a basic freshen up on a 1970 satellite convertible, a beautiful car. And the guy wanted to just get it to run right. So he brought it to us and we went through everything. And I had actually taken one of these Chinese BBDs apart. I had completely forgotten about that when I shot the video yesterday. So I had taken the carburetor apart and gone through it, checked everything, and everything looked up to snuff. There's very little that could go wrong inside of a carburetor. You know, I mean, really, they're extremely simple devices. So with that, I sent that Plymouth on its way saying, okay, don't have to think about any of this stuff. Now well, you don't check stuff like this. You don't look to see that all of the fittings are in there nice and tight. And I lost the contact information for that guy with the satellite. So if you see this, if you know this guy, or if you're him, do yourself a favor, okay? Take your air cleaner off and make sure that this thing is still in your carburetor. And if it's not in there, or I should say if it is in there, tap it all the way in. And that was the problem with this, okay? So this should have been buried about a third of its length into the body of the carburetor. But you could see here, I don't know how blurry it is, how close I can get. You could see here that it was only in, oh God, about 100,000ths of an inch. So whoever installed this just didn't give it enough oomph that it was seated firmly in the body of the carburetor. And so it popped out. Boy, the light is terrible. I'm sorry about that, guys. I was just shooting this where the light was really bad. But I'm supposed to be a professional, right? So that's what happened there. It was just barely hanging into the body of the carburetor, and I gave it gas and it got sucked in. Moral of the story, even when these things function correctly, the knockoff Chinese parts, even when they function correctly, even something as brutally primitive and simple as a copy of a Carter BBD, something stupid can go wrong with it. So if you are going to use one of these carburetors or any of these knockoff carburetors, and I'm not saying don't, because honestly, you can't beat the deal. Some of the carburetors they're knocking off are not available new in any other form. So that's the case like with these BBDs. You can't buy a new or an exact reproduction BBD. So if you want one of these carburetors and you want it new, you have to go to the aftermarket. You have to go and pick up a Chinese knockoff. If you find yourself in possession of one of these carburetors, meaning any of the knockoff Chinese carburetors, and this really, this applies to like every part, but we're talking about carburetors just specifically in this video. Go over everything. Make sure that the screws on the throttle blades are staked, right? So that they can't unscrew themselves as time goes on. Make sure that anything that's overhanging the throat of the carburetor, like this vent tube, is in there secure, right? Now I'm going to put this back. I'm just going to knock this piece that's hanging off here off. It's got like it broke off just the tip of the casting. I guess that's what says a lot about the quality of the casting itself. But I'll clean this up and I'll knock it in to at least half of its depth, right? And then I don't think it'll ever be a problem. But it could conceivably be a problem. Any of these carburetors can be, any of these parts, but any of these carburetors can have a flaw like this. So you have to do your own quality control. When you take it out of the box and you start looking it over and make sure everything is as it should be, make sure everything is tight, make sure everything is just so before you bolt it on your car and you start sucking parts down into the intake manifold. All right, so that's it. Guys, thanks for pointing that out. I swear to God, I would never have noticed it if I didn't read the comments. I never would have seen it. I never would have noticed it. I don't look at stuff that closely. Once I'm done shooting it, it's like, here, Kat, send it, right? And Kathy doesn't really pay attention to this stuff either. So if it wasn't for you guys in the comments, I never would have spotted that. So thank you. And that's it. Quality control, Chinese quality control strikes again. Beware. I'll see you tomorrow.